And we're back with my mayor and candidate, Darden Rice. Hi, Darden. How's life on the campaign trail?
Hey, Joe. Things are going really great. Glad to be here. Last week I had a fun stint guest bartending at Enigma there in Grand Central District in the Edge, and we had a great forum on Saturday night with the NAACP. And I will announce here first that we're very excited that my campaign has received an endorsement from Emily's List. So we're doing great. We're just out talking to voters. We're having a good time. We're getting stronger every day.
That's awesome. And shout out to Esther Eugene. So you mentioned Enigma. There's certainly a part of the wonderful character of St. Pete, and that's our topic for today. We're looking at things you'll do as mayor to preserve and also augment the wonderful place we live in, wonderful place we call home. So we're looking at three things that you think will be important to do as mayor. Let's go with number one.
Okay, well, this is probably, I think, one of the most important questions that we're facing on the campaign trail is how do we protect our quality of life? We want to continue growing and keep up this awesome momentum, but how do we protect what's special to us and our quality of life? And I do think at the top of the list, a lot of people are thinking about what Tropicana Field redevelopment means to our city. And as I'm talking to people all over St. Petersburg, and certainly what I've heard very closely as a city council member over the last several years, is that there's a concern about displacement. There's a concern that we need to really focus on bringing in job training opportunities and good paying jobs. So I think that as we talk about Tropicana Field redevelopment, we also need to recognize how this particular development will accentuate our city's character and charm. And we want that to happen. We don't want it to detract from St. Pete. We don't want a city within a city. We don't want this like anywhere USA kind of feeling in the heart of St. Petersburg. We want people to always know and feel that they're in St. Pete. So, we don't want just an enclave of structures that don't seem to hang together, that don't fit in with the mesh of the rest of the city. And I think it's really important that to realize our full potential, that we really need to look for ways for Tropicana redevelopment to really accentuate our cultural traditions and our diversity.
And as we dig into sort of the specifics of doing that, a lot of those elements will feed up into the brand of the Trop site, which ideally will mesh nicely with the brand of the city. So if we think about that, and those elements that you're talking about, making sure we have included in the Trop redevelopment, how do they contribute to the brand? What is the feeling that those elements should evoke?
Well, you are the branding expert, but I think I really like what St. Pete has done the last few years with the Sun Shines Here campaign. That's sort of like borrowing and dusting off our old branding from the 30s and 40s. I do think we need to update it, though, so that as mayor, when I go across the country and bring employment centers here and bring jobs here, I want to be able to talk about how St. Pete is a cutting edge city, that we're a city of the arts, we're a diverse city, and that we have a strong tech presence, because I think those jobs and those industries really follow the arts and they follow tech. And I think St. Pete needs to get a little bit sharper with our branding, because you can find sunshine anywhere, but we want to be really clear that St. Pete is a progressive city, that people from all walks of life can come here and thrive. And Tropicana Field really needs to reflect that and not just be a generic group of buildings that seem disconnected from the rest of the city.
That makes a lot of sense. All right, let's move on to item number 2 on the list.
Okay, so we really want to continue our momentum, but not have to knock down every building, every old building in St. Pete. And you all know I'm a strong advocate for historic preservation. I know the current process does need some work. Nobody likes third party hostile designations, but still, protecting our old buildings and heritage is very important. And it's especially important as we go forward. So, I do want to single out something about historic preservation that I like in particular, and that's adaptive reuse. Some people think historic preservation is about preserving an old building in amber, and that there's some committee that tells you what windows you have to order. And none of that is accurate. Adaptive reuse means that you can reuse a building for other purposes. You can take that old gas station and turn it into a coffee shop. You can turn that old hotel and then turn it into an art gallery or a bar. There's a lot of things that we can do to preserve that front facade and that look of the older building. And then behind it can really be limitless in terms of the use of the building, of whatever modern use we have for it. And certainly near downtown on Williams Park, we have that facade of the First Baptist Church. And behind it is not a church at all. There's sort of like a WeWork sort of um, um, work center and a parking area that where we've really made use of that square footage, but from the front we were able to protect one of the city's oldest churches. So I think that as we go forward, adaptive reuse is something that I'd like to see our community really start to understand more and embrace. In City Hall, I'm going to be a leader in how we incentivize this.
And you mentioned in the first item on the list about making sure the trop blended, and then preservation obviously has a blending element as well, blending the old with the new. Can you think of any specific sort of philosophical updates or innovations you would make in the zoning laws in St. Pete to help blend the old and the new?
Well, it does boil down to the specifics of zoning. Um, I think that as we go forward and listen to the many stakeholders who have a mix of opinions about how we achieve historic preservation, I know some people would like to see that decoupled from the zoning process. Um, I think that one of the tools in the toolbox is designating neighborhoods and potential business districts. And I think, frankly, that's an area that our community has to do a lot more talking about to figure out what really works best for everybody. Like, how do we honor this important goal to create historic districts, but at the same time, there's a balance with individuals' private property rights. And council is having a big discussion on this coming up in, I believe, in August or September. And we had started this conversation before COVID. This will be picking up the second part of it. And I'm really looking forward to it because, as I've said, I am a historic preservationist, but I think, the city needs to step in with some leadership and to help provide a way through some of the more controversial parts of our historic preservation policy.
Wonderful. All right, and our final item on the list for today.
Okay, trees, trees, trees. I have been a strong supporter of protecting our trees, from strengthening our tree ordinance to making it more difficult to just go and cut down a beautiful old live oak tree, to wanting to plant trees. And I think our city could do a little bit better in having a tree planting program, especially grand trees. The flowering crepe myrtles and palms are great too, but we need to be very intentional with bringing back some of our grand trees, like the live oak trees. And so I think I'd like to continue our inventory process. I'd love the ideas of where we count trees as green infrastructure. It means a lot to the way the city looks. They provide much needed shade, and any city, any neighborhood that has lots of trees really brags about it. So I think that's something that our city in the past has been good at, and I would like to see us bring that back.
And sort of riffing off of the trees theme, urban gardens, urban agriculture, and even turning plots inside the city limits and to housing chickens and other animals. What are your thoughts on any changes you would make to incentivize folks to grow more food or be more localized with things in that area?
I am so proud and so excited by the people who are in the urban ag space. My colleague Brandy Gabbard worked with Senator Roussan to pass some much needed changes in the state legislature to allow local government to pass regulations to make it easier for people to grow gardens, to sell and trade their produce. And I'm here for all of it. My grandfather was a farmer, that side of the family, longtime farmers. And I just think it's a great way to bring people together. It's great for self sufficiency, there's entrepreneurial possibilities. It's a great hobby, it builds community. So I'm really happy for the city stepping up in this regard. I've been working on a community garden in my district at the Meadowlawn Garden Ecological Center that will be done with soon. And every corner of the community really wants this as a way to really build the fabric of a neighborhood. And I think it's very exciting.
Wonderful. Candidate Darden Rice, thanks for joining us again on My Mayor.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for having me. Always good to be here.